stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. Let's start this one out with thanks to the author of the Red Eye Daily. That is a Twitter compilation. Now, I don't know if that author is John Palmer, who is Mr.777 on the Twitter, or who it is, but I do know that John Palmer has been a supporter of this show for a long time, so throwing his name in there is not a bad idea. And I also want to thank El Floyo, that's Fingers Flying, for an ad to their Twitter compilation. Didn't see a name for it, but it seems a good one as well. Both of these are great places to go for quick information, all in one place on Twitter, and it is part of the new media that I think some people are missing out on. Now, last show I told you guys about a demonstration that was going to go on in Slough in the United Kingdom, put on by the English Defence League against the establishment of an Islamic center, and that did happen. Happened on the 1st of February, and though the English Defence League believes that it was a very successful demonstration, that they did give some support to the local people in Slough in showing that they were not alone in opposing the establishment of this Islamic center, the media reacted rather typically. Now, I'm going to place the source article for this and all other source materials in UBG Contact on the Twitter. That's where you can read the whole of these articles that I'm going to base my show on, and it's where you can look at videos and such that are also germane to this show. The media coverage was very much like what we saw on the Mail Online, and this was their headline. 2 police officers injured and 4 people arrested after violence breaks out during English Defence League march. And they go on to talk about the counter-protesters to this, who call themselves anti-fascists. Now, let's be clear about who these supposed anti-fascists are. They are some of these self-same Muslims who are running Sharia patrols in the streets of London, and we're going to get into that in a bit, and who are in favor of this Islamic center, and they're ready to use violence against anyone who is against it. In fact, they used violence against members of the English Defence League, and the 4 people who were arrested were all from these supposed anti-fascists. Now, I want you guys to be careful, and I'm speaking particularly to any progressives that might be listening. Guys, some of these organizations, to get sympathy in the media, which is mostly aimed at you, the progressives, call themselves anti-fascists and peaceful. So you always have to examine who these people are. The English Defence League is not reticent about saying who they are and what they stand for. And that was typified by a speech given by a young man who's known as Tommy English, 20 years old, and an activist in the English Defence League and in his own neighborhood. For instance, this lone 20-year-old man protects a 90-year-old woman living in his neighborhood from harassment by Islamist gangs who just happen to think that it's fun to harass a 90-year-old woman. This is someone I call a kid because I'd be proud to have him for a son, and what I'm going to do is post an audio of Tommy's speech at UBG Contact on the Twitter, where you can listen to it. I would post the audio here, but I don't think that I can process it well enough where you guys can really clearly hear it. Now, Islamists in London have been running what they call Sharia patrols. They will come up to people who are carrying alcohol, men who happen to be walking with a woman who isn't wearing a burqa or a hijab or whatever, and they'll start harassing them, claiming that it is a quote-unquote Muslim area that they are in, and that they must modify their behavior to the extent of these Sharia patrols confiscating people's alcohol and things of that nature. and telling them that they cannot engage in any behavior that is not approved of by Muslims in a Muslim area. Now, I also have an audio of this kind of thing going on, plus the EDL countering it with their own Christian patrols in which they go to these areas that these Sharia patrols have called Muslim areas and handing out EDL leaflets. That's all they do. Now, I'm talking to progressives. You guys have been at the vanguard for decades against religious fanaticism and the specter of a theocracy in the West. And these Sharia patrols in the streets of London claiming areas for the practitioners of one particular religion are the very thing that you've been opposing for decades. People, it's time to get on board with organizations like the English Defence League, Restore Australia, and organizations in the United States who are trying to stop the tide of the Islamic takeover of the Western world. Now, you'll be called a racist, and as I said in my last show, Islam is not a race. You'll be called a hater. You'll be called a religious bigot, and all of these things. And my response to that is, say that to the Islamists who are wanting to kill cartoonists, and say that to the Islamists who are claiming entire areas of London for themselves and declaring them quote-unquote Muslim areas, and trying through gang intimidation to modify people's behavior on the public streets. And yes, I have a video of that, and yes, I'm going to post that on UBG Contact on the Twitter, and you can listen to that for yourselves. It's the proof, people. This isn't fear-mongering. This is real. This is happening right now. We have to understand, if we don't step up and make certain that purveyors of Sharia, such as CARE here in the United States, don't gain a foothold in law, then we'll have the same thing going on our public streets that are going on the streets of London. I think we can do it, and I think we can do it without hate. Because if we've seen anything, we've seen that the hate is coming from the Islamists. All right. Wanted to get into your favorite part of the show, my favorite part of the show, Awesome Americans. And the Awesome American for this time is Dr. Zenko Hrynkyu. His last name is spelled Hrynkiw. The story for this? Headline: Alabama neurosurgeon walks 6 miles in snowstorm to perform brain surgery. Now, this was posted on the 1st by FoxNews.com. An Alabama neurosurgeon was at Brookwood Medical Center when he was needed 6 miles away for emergency brain surgery at Trinity Medical Center. Dr. Zenko set off in his car, but a rare snowstorm locked down traffic, and he didn't get farther than a few blocks. Dressed in his hospital scrubs, the 62-year-old got out of his car and walked the rest of the trip in freezing temperatures. He had 90% chance of death, Dr. Zenko said of the patient who had gone unconscious. The doctor said that if the patient did not have surgery, he would have died, and that's not going to happen on my shift. The doctor, Trinity's only brain surgeon, told reporters that the trip really wasn't that big of a deal, according to AL.com. It was kind of a nice day for a walk, he said, describing the trip as kind of a fun journey. Steve Davis, the charge nurse in the neurointensive care unit at Trinity, had alerted authorities that the doctor was walking. The police were looking for him, said Davis, but despite supposed sightings, couldn't locate him and didn't make contact with him until hours later. He finally called me and said, "Where's the patient? What's the status?" Davis said. He spoke to the family and went off to surgery. The patient is reported to be doing well. Now, there are some people who speak of doctors as privileged characters who take Wednesday off and golf and all this kind of thing and really don't work that hard and really don't think that much of their patients. It's just going from one job to another. It's almost an assembly line thing. But this 62-year-old man frankly took his life in his hands so that he could get to his patient and perform life-saving surgery. He could have shirked his responsibility. Instead, he chose to get out of his nice warm car and start walking until he reached the medical center so that he could perform the surgery. He went the extra mile when he didn't have to. And that, my friends, is the mark of an awesome American. Appreciate everyone who listens. Until next time, thank you, and may your God go with you. Goodbye.